Okay, so for this week, we're going to talk about animation planning and a pipeline for that. Now, when I talk about a pipeline, I don't mean the entire pipeline, like things like modeling and rigging and things of that nature. This is more a pipeline for how to brainstorm and how to step through an animation process. So, typically speaking, I would have an assignment related to each one of these areas. And so there would have been 4 assignments. With everything that's going on, we're only going to focus on an assignment for this because there's a lot of stuff that I want to get to, and I don't want us to get bogged down and not get to a few things. So we're going to focus on storyboarding for our assignment. Now, as far as the lesson, I'm going to work through all of this, and we're going to talk about it, and I'm going to provide you some resources that I would still like you to go through, just so that you understand this actual pipeline. Remember, a lot of this is about gaining the knowledge and gaining the experience so that you can land a job as compared to just doing assignments so you can pass a class. Now, having said that, you do want to focus on this and get the assignment done that you pass the class, but you guys are going to want to be familiar with these other things as well. Okay, having said that, let's just go ahead and dive in. Okay, so let's talk about storyboards. So when you want to create a storyboard, first you obviously need a story to tell, right? And so how you go about developing a story, there's actually no real perfect answer for that, right? You might just be hit with the story that you want to tell, and it's not a problem for you. But a lot of times, individuals kind of get stuck in the place of, well, I don't know what story to tell, and things like that. And so where do you get a story when you're not for sure where to start? And that's kind of what this is about. So there's 3 areas here that I've identified that can be helpful as far as as examining some certain things that might help you develop ideas for different stories. And so you can pull from your own life, you can pull from the life of others, maybe you know somebody, or maybe it's just somebody that you're familiar with, or maybe there's a story that you know about them. You can also pull from groups that you belong to. And so you just want to start asking yourself some different questions about these 3 areas. And a lot of times that can help you get a story that at least get the ball rolling. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about your own life. Okay, so when you're thinking about your own life, think about asking yourself some questions about your life. And in all of our lives, we all have different stories, right? We've been living for a while and we've experienced a number of things. And so, was there a time in your life when you were really, really sad, or was there a time in your life when you were really, really happy, or was there like a super embarrassing moment in your life, or maybe even you discovered something new, and what went into that process of discovering that? Was it a hike that you found something? Was it a science experiment where you discovered something new? All these different things. And so you can start to ask yourself some questions about your life, and then different things as you answer these questions might pop up. And so for here, I provided a little example, and this actually is from my life. And this is the Grand Canyon. Okay. I've only been there once. But when I went to the Grand Canyon, you hear stories of people falling in, right? And so that was actually one of my goals when I went to the Grand Canyon was I want to see it, I want to enjoy it, but I don't want to be one of those statistics, right? I don't want to fall into the Grand Canyon. Well, lo and behold, even with that being a goal, I actually almost did fall into the Grand Canyon. I'm not going to get into all that went with that, but yeah, I really almost did fall in. Now, in this picture over here on the right, there is an individual falling, and there's a creepy character. Now, obviously, I didn't fall and die or anything like that, right? I was able to catch myself as I was sliding towards a little crevice. I was able to kind of latch onto the side and basically pull myself up. But this over here, like, obviously didn't happen. So the point, and that kind of makes the point here, right? You can take things from your own life and get some inspiration from it, but you can take it in new and different directions, right? Because obviously that last slide never happened, but this whole story was basically this little example was basically pulled from an experience in my life. Okay, so that's one area that you can pull from. Let's talk about the life of others. And so when you think about the life of others, I mean, others can be anybody. It can be a friend of yours. It can be somebody that you're familiar with, or maybe it's a legend of somebody. It's just somebody else, okay? And we're all pretty familiar. This little example is in regards to the Titanic, right? So we're all pretty familiar with that and what happened. And so you can pull from things like this too, right? Where you know what happened. And so this sets the stage for something. And so we have the Titanic, and then you can use that stage to create something in, right? So here I put a little family of 4, okay? And then at the end, you see 2 individuals watching the ship go down, right? Well, there's 4 people here and only 2 here. So like the idea, maybe that's the kids watching this go down. And if there's not 4 people there, we could then deduce that the parents didn't make it, right? So this could be another way of developing stories. Now, yes, I do kind of recognize this is going a little dark on the end here, and so is this. So it doesn't always have to have like a negative thing, right? It could be funny, or it could be uplifting, or something like that too. Okay, so let's talk about this third and final area. So you want to think about groups that you belong to. And so the groups that you belong to could be a number of things, right? It could be your family, could be your friends, it could be your culture, or maybe even your country, okay? And so you want to ask yourself questions about all that again. You know, was there anything amazing that happened to you? Was there anything funny? Was there anything hard? Was there anything discovery-wise, right? And so from here, I just gave another little example of a family trip where we were sent on a detour. And the detour actually was incredibly spooky, right? And so you can pull, again, from something that maybe you heard like happen to your mom and dad, or maybe it was a family trip or something like that. But these 3 areas will give you, like, if you're, again, if you just have an idea and you're like, oh, I know the story I want to tell, great, that's perfect. If you don't and you're stuck on getting something started, these are 3 good areas to just start off, right? Your own life of others, or different groups that you belong to, right? And start asking yourself questions about any one of these 3, and it can start to lead you on a path, again, that you don't always have to take the same ending, but it could at least help you get started. Okay, so let's talk about your assignment. So I'm going to send you this template. It has 9 boxes that you can, for whatever story you come up with, you have 9 boxes that you can draw some storyboarded pictures to help illustrate your story. Now, so you would put an image in here, and so on and so on and so on. Now, under each one of these, you'll notice that there's a section for dialogue. And so this would be where you just essentially mention like what the dialogue is in the scene. Not that you have to put it line for line, but the essence of what's going on dialogue-wise in the scene. Now, if there is no dialogue, that's fine. Just put NA or no dialogue or something like that. The other thing that would also be good is to put the action. So describe the action that's happening in here, and that will help me to interpret what you're doing here. And then also effects, any kind of effects, or if you have any kind of camera pushes, you could use like arrows, like on each one of these corners, you could draw like arrows pushing in, like if you had like a camera push or something like that. But you could also describe it down here. Okay, so I will post the assignment up onto Blackboard, okay, and I do want you to submit this electronically, okay. At this point, I'll have to look and see when I want the due date. It'll probably be about a week and a half out from when I post it. I will send a message when I post this, but essentially keep an eye out on Blackboard. Now, I do want you to submit this electronically, so you could print this out, draw on here, draw on here, draw on here, and then write on here and so forth what's going on. Or you could even do this electronically if you have like a picture that you've made, for example. I'll just copy that. Then I could come over here and like paste that in there. So you could essentially just paste this in here as well. So you can paste pictures in here and then type in here and kind of describe as well. So either way though, either if you want to do it by hand and then just take a picture of it with your cell phone and submit that into Blackboard, that's fine. Or you can do just do it in here like you just type and paste pictures and things like that. Either way, that will work, but you do need to submit that electronically. Okay, so now we're going to start working through our reference reels, our pre-visualization, and our final animation. While these areas are not related to your assignments, again, it's still important for you to know. And I have some videos that I walk specifically on through how to set up a reference reel and how to get that imported into Maya. And then previs, I have a link here to another video where I go over how to do blocking animations and how to focus on your key poses. And then finally, I have a video here that goes over the final animations, working the in-betweens and the interpolation, and bringing it all together into a final animation. And I will show you some examples of the end results of these, but these videos go through specifically how I set up this scene that you'll see in a minute. So I would encourage you to watch these as well. Okay, so as we talk through this, though, as we talk about our reference reel, what is a reference reel? So a reference reel is essentially you going out and recording somebody doing a performance. And so that could be a physical performance. Maybe you don't know how to animate somebody juggling and you need to do that. Well, go and watch somebody juggle and get a recording of that. And then you can bring that recording actually into Maya and have that as reference so that you can animate your character juggling and utilize that reference. Okay, now it's not only just physical performances, but it can also be acting performances. So you can record your different actors doing different performances, and you can build your character's performance based off of those. And one of the benefits of that is you can record multiple actors, and maybe you like what one actor is doing here, and you like what that actor is doing there, and you can pull those elements out of each performance and put them together when you're building your character's performance. And so I'm going to show you an example more on a physical type performance than an acting performance, but hopefully it will help kind of make the point. And so in this scene, you can see that we have reference set up, right? And again, these videos that I provide here go over how to do all this, right? I'm just showing the end products right now. And so in this end product of building a reference reel, if I click play, you can see that we actually have a performance right here that I could then start to use to help build my character's performance, right? And so very specifically, if I come to frame 120, I can see what that pose looks like, and I can pose this character in a fashion that matches this. And then on 125, right, I can pose my character in a fashion that matches this. And so this can provide a way to build some very nice natural performances based off of reference that we have. And again, we can also do this for like acting performances and things like that. But again, watch that video. That'll show how to get images in here or get a movie in here and have that ready to go for a reference. Okay, let's continue on. Let's talk about previs and what pre-visualization is. So once we have our reference reels completed, this would essentially be our next step. And so what previs looks like is it typically focuses on blocking out key poses that does not include in-between poses or interpolation. And so what are in-betweens and interpolation? So I'll jump ahead a little bit here. If I look at this bat, and if I put it on this keyframe, and I jump ahead to this keyframe, you can see that those are the keyframes that I created. But interpolation is this blend. Like I haven't done anything here, but Maya is blending this animation from one key pose to the next key pose, and we can see that in our graph editor, right? And so our graph editor can show us these curves where there's animation that's been added in here by Maya, and we can control that. Again, I go over more of this, more in regards to this in these other videos, so be sure to check those out. Okay, so anyways, this is essentially what interpolation is. Now, what an in-between is if I come back to my previs and I've got the bat selected here, you can see that I have chosen 3 big key poses. Now, when I was doing my final cleanup, I didn't rely on interpolation to do all of this for me, right? So you can see that from 120 to 130, I added some additional keyframes to help with the animation, right? The interpolation wasn't quite doing exactly what I wanted, and so I can come in here and add in between keyframes with very specific poses that I like, okay? And so essentially that is what interpolation and in-betweens are. And so yes, previs can be choppy in its playback, but the reason why you want something like this is if I have interpolation and blend through all this, and I play through this and I have movement kind of like what's going on here in the background, my art director can't necessarily tell what are the poses that I've created and what's a blended or interpolated pose. So it's nice to have things like this so that your art director can come in and look very specifically at poses and help give you direction and feedback and things like that. So this can be a very nice step before you move on into like coming up with final animations and so forth. So essentially that's what a previs is. Another benefit of previs is that it allows you to get things into 3D, right? And so it's essentially a 3D storyboard. It allows you to get a feel for space and a feel for camera movements and all that sort of stuff as well. And that's a nice way to think of it, is that it's essentially a 3D storyboard. Okay, let's move on into our final animations. And so our final animations are what I was just showing you with the interpolation, where you go in and you add, you use your graph editor and you add in-betweens and things like that. And so you really want to take advantage of your graph editor here. So again, I talk more about it in this video, but you will have these tangent handles and things like this where you can control how this interpolation, for example, how the animation goes from this key to that key, right? Just by playing around with these handles and things like that. Again, you don't want to totally rely on that because sometimes interpolation won't give you exactly what you want, so you might need to build some additional key in-betweens. Now the bat, I needed to do some additional work, right? You don't see as many in-betweens on some of these other curves, but because that bat has a very specific swing, I did need to go in and add a few additional in-betweens on that. So anyways, I hope this is helpful. This is a nice pipeline to help you kind of step through this process and focus on working on your 12 principal animation pose to pose, and then work on adding your in-betweens and all of your working with the graph editor and your interpolation and stuff. But essentially, at the very end, you should have an animation in here that feels pretty similar to what's going on back here. And so you can see timing-wise, this has also been really helpful to build this animation, right? Because if I was trying to just imagine how this would look, I don't think it would have turned out as well as having some actual reference footage in here to help drive and time this animation out. All right. Anyways, I hope this has been helpful.